Here's something that will fundamentally change how you understand reality itself. While mainstream physics clings to its comfortable 3 dimensions plus time, quantum experiments have shattered that limitation completely. Take the delayed choice quantum eraser experiment. Particles somehow know what measurement will be performed on them in the future, behaving accordingly before that measurement even happens. The double-slit experiment reveals something even stranger. Consciousness doesn't just observe reality, it actively shapes it across what appears to be higher dimensional space. Princeton's Piers laboratory spent decades documenting how human intention statistically influences random number generators and physical systems through mechanisms that operate beyond our normal space-time. The results were undeniable, yet largely ignored by mainstream science. What's fascinating is that ancient mystery schools encoded these exact principles into their teachings thousands of years ago. They understood that consciousness naturally accesses higher dimensional structures, making mental visualization and focused intention literal tools for reshaping probability waves. What most people dismiss as manifestation represents crude attempts to work with these dimensional mechanics. The ancient initiates, however, developed precise techniques for consciously navigating these layers of reality, techniques I'm about to share with you. When David Bohm first proposed his theory of the implicate order in the 1980 seconds, the physics establishment dismissed him as a mystic masquerading as a scientist. Today, his insights into the hidden dimensions of reality form the foundation of our understanding about how consciousness literally architects the future. Bohm discovered something extraordinary. Beneath our everyday reality lies what he called the explicate order, the unfolded world we experience. But this emerges from a deeper realm he termed the implicate order. Think of it like this. Imagine reality as a holographic projection, where every piece contains the whole, but most of it remains invisible, enfolded within a quantum field of pure potential. This isn't philosophical speculation anymore. The Institute of HeartMath has spent decades measuring exactly how your mental and emotional states create electromagnetic fields that extend far beyond your physical body. Their research shows that when you achieve what they call heart-brain coherence, a state where your thoughts and emotions align in focused intention, your electromagnetic field becomes measurably more organized and powerful. Here's what makes this revolutionary. These coherent electromagnetic patterns don't just stay contained within your body. They interact directly with what physicists call the zero-point field, the quantum vacuum that underlies all matter and energy. This field isn't empty space. It's teeming with virtual particles constantly popping in and out of existence, carrying information and maintaining the fabric of reality itself. The HeartMath researchers discovered that coherent mental states create what they call global coherence, measurable effects that extend far beyond the individual. When groups of people achieve this coherent state simultaneously, sensitive instruments can detect the electromagnetic changes from thousands of miles away. Your consciousness isn't trapped inside your skull. It's interfacing with the fundamental information matrix of the universe. Now, here's where ancient wisdom meets cutting-edge science. The Hermetic principle, as above, so below, wasn't mystical poetry. It was describing this exact quantum relationship between mental states and physical manifestation. The above refers to the higher dimensional implicate order where all possibilities exist simultaneously. The below is our three-dimensional reality where specific possibilities collapse into actual experience. Dr. Dean Radin, at the Institute of Noetic Sciences, has conducted thousands of experiments demonstrating how focused consciousness can influence physical systems. In his random number generator studies, when people meditate with clear intention while focusing on the machines, the supposedly random outputs become statistically ordered. The effect is small but consistent across millions of trials, and it increases dramatically when groups meditate together. But the most fascinating discovery came from Princeton's Engineering Anomalies Research Laboratory. For nearly 3 decades, they documented how human consciousness can influence electronic systems, mechanical devices, and even quantum processes. The key factor wasn't the intensity of mental effort, it was the quality of coherence between thought and emotion. This reveals the mechanism behind what many call manifestation. When you visualize a desired future while maintaining emotional coherence, feeling the reality of that future as if it already exists, you're literally tuning your consciousness to resonate with that timeline's frequency in higher dimensional space. Think of the quantum field as a vast holographic database containing every possible future. Each potential timeline vibrates at its own unique frequency signature. Your consciousness, when coherent, acts like a tuning fork that resonates with matching frequencies, making certain possibilities more likely to collapse into your experienced reality. This isn't wishful thinking, it's quantum mechanics in action. The observer effect in quantum physics shows that consciousness plays a fundamental role in determining which possibilities become actual. Your focused attention doesn't just observe reality, it participates in selecting which version of reality manifests from the infinite field of potential. The ancient mystics understood this intuitively. They knew that consciousness wasn't produced by the brain, but rather interfaced through it, connecting to vast dimensional realms where time operates differently. What they called divine mind, or cosmic consciousness, was their way of describing this quantum field of infinite possibility. Modern neuroscience is finally catching up. Studies using EEG and fMRI technology show that during deep meditative states focused on specific intentions, brainwave patterns synchronize in ways that mirror the coherent electromagnetic signatures HeartMath measures around the heart. Your entire nervous system becomes a biological antenna, broadcasting coherent signals into the quantum field. The implications are staggering. Every time you think about your future with emotional intensity, you're not just daydreaming, you're actively participating in quantum field dynamics that influence which timeline becomes your lived experience. The challenge is that most people broadcast incoherent signals, mixing desire with doubt, hope with fear, creating electromagnetic chaos that interferes with clear manifestation. But there's deeper dimensional mechanics at work here that platforms restrict us from sharing fully. Join our free Insights Academy newsletter through the link below to access the complete quantum field protocols, plus receive your complimentary copy of the Kybalion for a limited time. The practical application becomes clear once you understand the mechanism. Instead of trying to force outcomes through willpower alone, you learn to calibrate your visualization techniques to work with quantum field dynamics. This means creating emotional coherence first, then allowing specific images and scenarios to emerge from that coherent state, rather than mentally straining to control every detail. Your consciousness is already interfacing with these higher dimensions every moment. The question isn't whether this process works, it's whether you're using it intentionally or letting it operate randomly, manifesting whatever mixture of coherent and chaotic signals you happen to broadcast into the field of infinite possibility. When you walk into the Great Pyramid at Giza, most tour guides will tell you about burial chambers and ancient engineering marvels. What they won't mention is that you're standing inside one of history's most sophisticated consciousness amplification devices, a machine designed not for the dead, but for accessing what the Egyptians called the Duat, the realm where future possibilities crystallize into form. The ancient Egyptian mystery schools understood something that our modern materialist science has forgotten. Consciousness isn't produced by your brain. It's a multidimensional phenomenon that can operate across multiple planes of reality simultaneously. While we've been taught to think of awareness as trapped inside our skulls, Egyptian initiates knew that consciousness could travel, explore, and most importantly, program reality from higher dimensional vantage points. This isn't mystical speculation. The evidence sits right there in the pyramid texts, carved into stone over 4,000 years ago. These aren't religious platitudes, they're technical manuals. When you decode the symbolic language, you find detailed instructions for navigating what they called the paths of the sky, complete with specific landmarks, dimensional gateways, and consciousness-shifting techniques that would make modern remote viewers envious. Take the concept of the Ba, often mistranslated as soul. In the hieroglyphic texts, the Ba is described as the aspect of consciousness that maintains awareness while traveling through different dimensional frequencies. The Egyptians drew it as a bird with a human head because birds can navigate three-dimensional space in ways ground-bound creatures cannot. But this wasn't metaphor. It was technical documentation of how consciousness operates when freed from normal physical constraints. The breakthrough came when researchers started connecting Egyptian magical papyri with modern consciousness studies. The Papyrus of Ani, for instance, contains precise geometric diagrams that match the mathematical ratios found in successful remote viewing experiments. The Egyptians had discovered that certain geometric forms act as dimensional keys, unlocking access to specific frequency ranges in what we now call the quantum field. Here's where it gets fascinating. The Egyptians realized that the future doesn't exist as a single fixed timeline. It exists as crystallized thought forms floating in higher dimensional space, waiting to be accessed and modified. They called these thought forms Kheperu, literally meaning forms of becoming. Modern physicists working with quantum superposition are rediscovering the same principle. Multiple potential futures exist simultaneously until consciousness collapses them into specific outcomes. The Egyptian priests developed visualization chambers, spaces designed with specific acoustic properties and geometric proportions that amplify consciousness and enable what they called traveling in the dua. The King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid is one such space. Its dimensions create standing wave patterns that induce altered states of consciousness, while its granite construction provides piezoelectric properties that respond to focused intention. But here's the crucial part that separates Egyptian techniques from modern meditation practices. They understood that emotions serve as the fuel that powers consciousness through dimensional barriers. This is why their practices always combined intellectual understanding with intense emotional engagement. You can't just think your way into higher dimensions. You have to feel your way there. The magical papyri reveal exactly how this worked in practice. In the Leiden Papyrus, for example, there's a detailed protocol for what they called speaking with tomorrow. The practitioner would enter an altered state, visualize themselves in the Hall of Two Truths, a higher dimensional space where all possibilities exist, and then locate the specific future timeline they wanted to manifest. But they didn't just observe it passively. They would emotionally inhabit that future reality, feeling every detail as if it were already happening, then use specific geometric visualizations to seal that program into the Akashic field. Modern remote viewing research has validated these principles. Studies at Stanford Research Institute found that successful remote viewers consistently report accessing information from geometric spaces that exist outside normal space-time. They describe navigating through dimensional coordinates using emotional resonance as their compass, exactly what the Egyptian texts describe. The concept of the Ka represents perhaps their most sophisticated understanding. Often called the etheric double, the Ka is actually the aspect of consciousness that operates permanently in higher dimensions. While your physical awareness focuses on three-dimensional reality, your Ka maintains constant contact with the quantum field, continuously downloading information and uploading intentions. The Egyptians developed specific techniques for consciously connecting with your Ka, essentially learning to operate your higher dimensional interface directly. This is where practical application becomes possible. The Egyptian visualization techniques involved creating precise mental blueprints of desired futures, complete with sensory details, emotional textures, and geometric frameworks. They would then install these programs into the duat through ceremonial practices that combined focused intention, emotional intensity, and specific geometric movements designed to open dimensional gateways. One particularly powerful technique involved what they called building the House of Eternity, creating detailed mental constructs of desired outcomes in higher dimensional space. The practitioner would visualize themselves standing in the Hall of Maat, surrounded by geometric forms representing different aspects of reality. They would then construct their desired future like an architect, placing each element precisely within the geometric framework, while maintaining intense emotional connection to the outcome. The Egyptians discovered that these mental constructs, when properly installed in higher dimensional space, begin influencing physical reality through quantum field interactions. Modern consciousness researchers like Dean Radin have documented similar effects in laboratory settings, showing that focused intention can influence random number generators and other quantum-sensitive systems. What makes this particularly relevant today is that we're rediscovering these principles through cutting-edge research in consciousness-based healing and quantum biology. Studies show that healers who report accessing expanded states of awareness demonstrate measurable effects on cellular regeneration and DNA repair, effects that occur through mechanisms that mainstream biology can't explain, but that align perfectly with Egyptian understanding of consciousness, operating from higher dimensional vantage points. The real question isn't whether these techniques work. The question is whether you're ready to expand your understanding of what consciousness actually is and what it's capable of when properly trained. The Egyptians left us the blueprints. We just need the courage to use them. Deep in the monasteries of Tibet, while European scholars were still debating whether the earth was round, Buddhist practitioners had already mapped the architecture of reality itself. They weren't just meditating for inner peace, They were conducting sophisticated experiments in consciousness navigation that would make modern quantum physicists weep with envy. The Tibetan understanding begins with something they call the bardos, intermediate states of existence that most people stumble through unconsciously. But here's what's fascinating. These aren't mystical concepts. They're precise descriptions of different dimensional frequencies that your consciousness can access and navigate deliberately. Think about this for a moment. When you dream, where exactly are you? Your body lies motionless on the bed, yet you're experiencing vivid realities, meeting people, solving problems, sometimes even receiving information you couldn't have known in your waking state. The Tibetans figured out something extraordinary. Dreams aren't random neural firing. They're glimpses into parallel probability streams, alternate timelines where different versions of your choices play out. The Tibetan Book of the Dead isn't actually about death at all. It's a navigation manual for consciousness traveling through higher dimensional space. When Western scholars first encountered it, they completely missed the point, interpreting it as religious mythology. But read it with modern physics in mind, and you'll discover detailed instructions for maintaining awareness while your consciousness operates in dimensions beyond the physical. Here's where it gets really interesting. Tibetan monks developed something called dream yoga, the ability to become fully conscious while dreaming. But this isn't just lucid dreaming as we understand it in the West. They discovered that different mental states correspond to different dimensional frequencies, like tuning a radio to specific stations. Master practitioners can literally shift their consciousness between parallel probability streams while maintaining full awareness. Remember how we discussed the quantum field in our earlier exploration? The Tibetans were accessing this field centuries before we had words like quantum or probability waves. They called it the Dharmakaya, the dimension of pure potential where all possibilities exist simultaneously. Consider the Tulku tradition, the ability of advanced practitioners to consciously direct their rebirth. Now, before you dismiss this as religious belief, think about what this actually describes. A consciousness so skilled at dimensional navigation that it can project itself into specific timeline probabilities and incarnate there deliberately. These aren't random reincarnations. They're precise consciousness transfers into chosen reality streams. The Dalai Lama himself is considered a tulku, someone who has maintained continuous awareness across multiple lifetimes, consciously choosing each incarnation to serve specific purposes. Whether you believe in reincarnation or not, this represents a level of mastery over dimensional mechanics that challenges everything we think we know about consciousness and identity. But here's what you can actually apply right now. Tibetan visualization practices aren't simple imagination exercises. They involve creating multi-layered mental constructs that exist simultaneously across multiple dimensional frequencies. When a practitioner visualizes a deity or mandala, they're not just making pretty pictures in their mind. They're building coherent energy patterns that can influence quantum probability waves. Modern neuroscience has confirmed something remarkable about advanced Tibetan practitioners. Their brainwaves during deep meditation show patterns unlike anything seen in ordinary consciousness. They can generate gamma waves, associated with high-level cognitive processing at will, and maintain them for extended periods. Even more intriguingly, studies have documented their ability to influence physical systems through meditation alone, affecting everything from their body temperature to electromagnetic fields around them. The practice of Phawa, consciousness transference, demonstrates perhaps the most advanced level of dimensional navigation. Practitioners learn to project their awareness into higher dimensions and operate from those levels while remaining connected to physical reality. This isn't out-of-body experience as typically understood, but conscious operation from multiple dimensional perspectives simultaneously. What makes this possible? The Tibetans discovered that mantras function as frequency keys, specific sound patterns that attune consciousness to particular dimensional levels. Each syllable creates resonance patterns in both the brain and the quantum field, literally tuning your awareness to different reality frequencies. But here's the practical goldmine. Their understanding of karma as crystallized thought forms in higher dimensional space. They realize that what we call karma isn't some cosmic justice system. It's the accumulation of thought patterns that create probability tendencies in the quantum field. And here's the crucial insight. These patterns can be transformed through skilled dimensional navigation. When you understand karma this way, you realize that changing your future isn't about positive thinking or wishful visualization. It's about learning to operate consciously in the dimensional space where thought forms crystallize into probability streams. The Tibetans developed specific techniques for this. combining visualization with breathing patterns that create coherent energy signatures capable of influencing quantum probability waves. Modern research on neuroplasticity confirms what Tibetan practitioners have known for centuries. These practices actually rewire the brain for enhanced dimensional perception. The neural pathways associated with ordinary three-dimensional thinking become less dominant, while networks associated with multidimensional awareness strengthen and expand. The key insight here is that your consciousness isn't trapped in linear time. You can learn to access the same higher dimensional space that Tibetan masters navigate, where multiple timeline possibilities exist simultaneously. The techniques they developed, from dream yoga to visualization practices, are technologies for consciousness that remain as effective today as they were 1,000 years ago. This isn't about adopting Tibetan Buddhism as a religion. It's about recognizing that these practitioners developed sophisticated methods for accessing the same quantum field that modern physics describes. The same higher dimensional space where your future possibilities are taking shape right now. When the Egyptian initiates developed their techniques for accessing the Duai and Tibetan masters perfected their timeline navigation methods, they were actually rediscovering principles that had been encoded thousands of years earlier in what we now call the Hermetic tradition. The ancient texts of Hermeticism, particularly the Emerald Tablet and the Corpus Hermeticum, contain perhaps the most sophisticated blueprint ever created for understanding consciousness as a multi-dimensional phenomenon. Here's what most people don't realize about these texts. They weren't written as philosophical treatises. They were operational manuals. The famous phrase, "as above, so below," isn't mystical poetry. It's describing the fractal relationship between higher dimensional patterns and physical reality. When you understand what this actually means, you gain access to the same consciousness expansion techniques that allowed ancient practitioners to literally program their future from higher dimensional vantage points. The Hermetic worldview describes reality as consisting of 7 distinct dimensional levels, each operating according to specific laws and accessible through particular mental states. Think of these as frequencies of consciousness, much like radio stations. Your ordinary waking awareness typically operates on what Hermeticists call the physical plane, the densest frequency. But your consciousness has the capacity to tune into progressively subtler frequencies, each offering expanded perspective and influence over the patterns that eventually crystallize into your lived experience. What makes Hermetic understanding so powerful is its recognition that consciousness doesn't have to choose just one frequency. Advanced practitioners learn to operate simultaneously across multiple dimensional levels, perceiving reality from several vantage points at once. Imagine being able to see your current situation from ground level while simultaneously viewing it from a mountaintop and from an airplane. That's essentially what multidimensional consciousness allows. The 7 Hermetic principles aren't abstract concepts. They're operational laws governing how these dimensional mechanics actually work. Mentalism tells us that all reality originates in consciousness. Correspondence shows us how patterns repeat across dimensional levels. Vibration reveals that everything exists as frequency. Polarity demonstrates how opposites create dynamic tension that drives manifestation. Rhythm describes the cyclical nature of dimensional energy flows. Cause and effect maps how actions ripple across dimensional boundaries. And gender explains the creative interplay between receptive and projective forces that birth new realities. Here's where it gets practically applicable. Hermeticists developed a specific technique called rising on the planes that involves systematically shifting your consciousness through progressively higher dimensional frequencies. You start by achieving deep meditative focus, then use visualization and breath work to lift your awareness beyond ordinary physical perception. As you ascend through each level, you gain access to increasingly broad perspectives on your life circumstances and enhanced ability to influence the patterns that shape your experience. Modern neuroscience is finally catching up to what these ancient practitioners knew. Recent studies at Princeton's Engineering Anomalies Research Laboratory demonstrated that human consciousness can measurably influence quantum systems, exactly what Hermetic theory predicted. Other research has shown how specific geometric visualizations create corresponding patterns in brainwave activity, validating the Hermetic understanding that thoughts create geometric structures in higher dimensional space. The Hermetic concept of the astral body represents something far more sophisticated than most people realize. It's not some ghostly duplicate of your physical form, it's the aspect of your consciousness that naturally operates in higher dimensions and serves as the interface between mental intention and physical manifestation. When you learn to consciously direct your astral body, you can literally program desired outcomes into what hermeticists call the astral matrix, the higher dimensional template that guides physical reality formation. Ancient Hermetic magicians used precise visualization techniques combined with ritual practices to create what they called thought forms, geometric patterns of organized energy that exist simultaneously across multiple dimensions. These thought forms function as templates, attracting circumstances and opportunities that match their energetic signature. The key insight is that these patterns must be geometrically precise and maintained with consistent emotional energy to effectively influence physical outcomes. Here's a practical application you can experiment with. Hermetic visualization involves creating detailed mental images that incorporate specific geometric elements. Instead of vaguely imagining your desired outcome, you construct a precise geometric thought form, perhaps visualizing your goal as existing within a golden dodecahedron surrounded by spiraling energy patterns. You then use controlled breathing to charge this thought form with emotional energy while simultaneously projecting it into higher dimensional space through focused intention. The most advanced Hermetic practitioners understood that successful reality programming requires working with the natural rhythms and polarities described in their 7 principles. They timed their practices according to planetary cycles, used complementary opposites to create dynamic tension, and maintained their thought forms through sustained attention over specific time periods. What's particularly fascinating is how modern research on consciousness and quantum mechanics continues validating core Hermetic insights. Studies on remote viewing have shown that consciousness can access information across vast distances, exactly what you'd expect if awareness can operate in dimensions where space and time function differently. Research on meditation's effects on brain coherence reveals that sustained practice creates the kind of unified consciousness states that Hermeticists described as necessary for accessing higher planes. The ultimate goal of Hermetic practice isn't just personal empowerment. It's developing what they called divine consciousness, the ability to perceive and operate from the highest dimensional frequencies where individual will aligns with universal principles. From this perspective, you're not manipulating reality against its natural flow, but rather learning to consciously participate in the creative processes that are constantly shaping existence at every level. If you're ready to explore these techniques yourself, start with simple geometric visualization exercises combined with rhythmic breathing, gradually building your capacity to maintain precise thought forms while expanding your awareness beyond ordinary physical perception. The key is consistent practice and patience. Multidimensional consciousness development is a skill that strengthens over time, just like physical training develops muscle memory and coordination. The most revolutionary discovery in neuroscience isn't happening in some distant laboratory. It's unfolding inside your skull right now. While you've been told that your brain is simply a biological computer processing information, cutting-edge research reveals something far more extraordinary. Your neural architecture contains specialized circuitry designed specifically for multidimensional consciousness access. Think about what happens when you meditate or find yourself in that twilight state between waking and sleeping. Your everyday mental chatter quiets down, yet something else seems to activate, a deeper awareness that feels connected to something larger than yourself. Neuroscientists have now identified the specific brain network responsible for these experiences, and what they've found challenges everything we thought we knew about consciousness. This network is called the default mode network, or DMN, and it's perhaps the most misunderstood system in your brain. Traditional neuroscience dismissed it as mere background noise, neural activity that occurred when the brain wasn't focused on specific tasks. But researchers at the University of California and other leading institutions have discovered that the DMN is actually your brain's gateway to non-local information fields. When advanced meditators enter deep states of consciousness, brain imaging reveals something remarkable. Their DMN doesn't shut down, it transforms. The typical patterns of self-referential thinking dissolve, replaced by connectivity patterns that extend far beyond normal neural boundaries. These practitioners show synchronized activity across brain regions that normally operate independently, creating what researchers describe as global workspace integration. Dr. Judson Brewer's groundbreaking research at Yale demonstrated that experienced meditators can literally rewire their DMN through practice. Their brains develop enhanced connectivity between the prefrontal cortex, which handles spatial processing, the temporal lobe, which manages time perception, and the parietal cortex, which integrates sensory information. This isn't just neuroplasticity, it's the brain constructing new highways for multidimensional awareness. But here's where it gets truly fascinating. Deep within your brain lies a small pinecone-shaped gland that mainstream science has largely ignored, the pineal gland. Ancient traditions called it the third eye, or the seat of the soul, and modern research is beginning to understand why. The pineal contains specialized cells called pinealocytes that respond to electromagnetic frequencies in ways that conventional neurons cannot. These pinealocytes function as biological quantum receivers, capable of detecting subtle energy fields that exist beyond our normal sensory range. When exposed to specific electromagnetic frequencies, particularly those generated during deep meditation or visualization, pinealocytes produce dimethyltryptamine, or DMT, often called the spirit molecule. DMT isn't just a psychoactive compound, it's a key that unlocks your brain's ability to perceive higher dimensional realities. Research by Dr. Rick Strassman revealed that DMT production naturally spikes during profound spiritual experiences, near-death encounters, and moments of expanded consciousness. Your pineal gland is literally manufacturing the biochemical bridge between ordinary awareness and multidimensional perception. This connects directly to the revolutionary work of physicist Sir Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Dr. Stuart Hameroff on quantum consciousness. Their research on microtubules, tiny structures within neurons, suggests that consciousness operates through quantum processes that transcend classical brain activity. These microtubules form a vast network throughout your brain, capable of maintaining quantum coherence even in the warm, noisy environment of neural tissue. When your brain enters specific states, particularly during the Tibetan visualization practices we explored earlier, or the Hermetic consciousness techniques, these microtubules begin operating as quantum processors. They're not just processing information, they're interfacing with quantum fields that exist beyond the constraints of space and time. The most compelling evidence comes from brainwave research. Scientists have identified that gamma waves, neural oscillations above 40 Hz, consistently correlate with experiences of expanded awareness and apparent access to non-local information. Advanced practitioners of meditation and visualization show sustained gamma activity that far exceeds normal ranges, sometimes reaching frequencies of 80 to 100 Hz during peak states. These aren't random neural firings. Electroencephalography studies reveal that high gamma states create coherent patterns across the entire brain, synchronizing regions that normally operate independently. During these states, practitioners report experiences that align perfectly with accessing higher dimensional information, spontaneous insights, precognitive awareness, and the ability to influence external systems through focused intention. Dr. Jacobo Grinberg's research in Mexico documented cases where advanced practitioners could influence electronic equipment, alter random number generators, and even affect the brain states of other people at a distance. Brain scans during these events showed unusual neural activity in the right temporal lobe and increased connectivity between the pineal gland and the prefrontal cortex. This brings us to your brain's mirror neuron system, specialized cells that activate both when you perform an action and when you observe others performing the same action. Recent research suggests these neurons may be detecting quantum field fluctuations created by other conscious beings, enabling genuine telepathic communication. When two people meditate together or engage in synchronized visualization, their brains begin showing similar patterns of gamma wave activity. This isn't coincidence, it's quantum entanglement occurring at the neural level. The mirror neuron system appears to be your brain's natural telepathic receiver, constantly scanning for quantum signatures from other consciousness. So, how do you activate these dormant neural circuits? The ancient practices we've discussed aren't just spiritual exercises. They're precise neurotechnologies for enhancing your brain's multidimensional capacity. Start with gamma wave entrainment. Use binaural beats at 40 Hz or higher during meditation to train your brain to sustain high gamma states. Combine this with specific breathing patterns, 4 counts in, hold for 4, out for 4, while visualizing light entering through your pineal gland. Practice dimensional visualization techniques. Spend time each day imagining yourself existing simultaneously across multiple timelines, just as the Tibetan masters taught. This literally builds new neural pathways between your spatial processing centers and your consciousness integration networks. Engage in quantum intention exercises. Focus your attention on influencing small, measurable systems, random number generators, electronic devices, or even the growth patterns of plants. Document your results. This strengthens the neural circuits responsible for consciousness-matter interaction. Your brain isn't just processing your current reality, it's constantly interfacing with quantum fields containing infinite possibilities. The specialized circuitry is already there, waiting for you to learn how to use it. Every meditation session, every visualization practice, every moment of expanded awareness is literally rewiring your neural architecture for multidimensional consciousness access. The question isn't whether your brain can connect to higher dimensions, it's whether you're ready to activate the extraordinary capabilities you were born with. Here's something that'll completely reshape how you think about your own mind. The mathematics of consciousness reveals that your awareness operates according to principles that fundamentally transcend the boundaries of space and time. We're not talking philosophy here, we're talking hard numbers, rigorous experiments, and mathematical proofs that demonstrate your consciousness functions in ways that classical physics says should be impossible. Let me start with mathematician Roger Penrose's groundbreaking work on consciousness and quantum mechanics. Penrose discovered something extraordinary. When you solve complex problems, especially those requiring genuine insight or creativity, your brain appears to utilize quantum computational processes that bypass the limitations of classical logic entirely. Think about those moments when a solution suddenly clicks in your mind, when you intuitively grasp something that would take hours to work through step by step. Penrose's mathematical models show this isn't just faster thinking. It's your consciousness accessing quantum superposition states where multiple solution paths exist simultaneously until the moment of insight collapses them into a single answer. But here's where it gets really fascinating. Researchers like Dean Radin at the Institute of Noetic Sciences have documented something called presentiment, the measurable ability of your nervous system to respond to future events before they actually occur. In carefully controlled laboratory studies, they've recorded statistically significant physiological responses occurring 2 to 10 seconds before random emotional stimuli are presented to subjects. Your skin conductance changes, your heart rate shifts, your brain waves alter, all before your conscious mind has any way of knowing what's coming. These aren't small effects or statistical flukes. We're talking about thousands of trials with odds against chance in the millions to one. The mathematics are undeniable. Your consciousness is somehow accessing information from future time streams and preparing your body accordingly. This suggests that at least part of your awareness operates outside the linear flow of time as we normally experience it. Quantum physicist Henry Stapp took this even further with his mathematical models showing how consciousness actually collapses quantum wave functions. In Stapp's equations, your mind isn't just observing reality, it's playing a fundamental role in creating it. Every moment of conscious attention literally selects which version of reality manifests from the infinite array of quantum possibilities. The mathematics show that without conscious observation, quantum systems remain in superposition indefinitely. Your awareness is the catalyst that transforms potential into actuality. Now, quantum biology research has revealed that biological systems routinely utilize quantum effects like entanglement and superposition in ways that shouldn't be possible if life operated purely according to classical physics. Photosynthesis in plants, navigation in birds, even the sense of smell, all depend on quantum processes that suggest life itself operates according to multidimensional principles. Your brain, as the most complex biological system we know, appears to be quantum-enabled at the most fundamental level. The mathematical framework that explains all this comes from Bell's theorem and experiments on quantum non-locality. Bell proved mathematically that entangled particles remain instantaneously connected regardless of spatial separation, Einstein's spooky action at a distance. But here's what's remarkable. Consciousness research is revealing similar non-local correlations in human awareness. When researchers study pairs of meditators or individuals with strong emotional bonds, they find brainwave synchronicities that mirror quantum entanglement patterns. Mathematical analysis of these consciousness studies reveals something extraordinary. When two people achieve deep meditative states together, their brainwaves don't just become similar, they become mathematically correlated in ways that violate classical assumptions about separate, isolated minds. The statistical correlations show up instantly across any distance, suggesting consciousness operates through the same non-local principles that govern quantum particles. This connects directly to the mathematical concept of higher dimensional spaces in physics. Just as a two-dimensional being couldn't fully comprehend a three-dimensional object, we might be three-dimensional beings trying to understand consciousness that operates in higher dimensions. The mathematics of hyperdimensional geometry provide frameworks for understanding how your awareness might access information beyond normal three-dimensional limitations. Remote viewing studies provide concrete evidence for this. When researchers analyzed the statistical results of thousands of remote viewing trials, the mathematics show information acquisition rates that significantly exceed chance across both spatial and temporal barriers. The effect sizes are small but consistent, exactly what you'd expect if consciousness could access higher dimensional information channels that occasionally leak through to ordinary awareness. Integrated information theory offers perhaps the most sophisticated mathematical model of consciousness we currently have. The theory suggests that awareness emerges from complex information integration patterns that create what mathematician Giulio Tononi calls phi, a measure of how much information a system generates above and beyond its parts. But here's the crucial insight. The mathematical calculations show that high phi systems don't necessarily respect the boundaries of individual brains. Complex information integration patterns can extend across multiple minds, suggesting consciousness might be fundamentally networked rather than isolated. Consider what happens during deep meditation when analyzed mathematically. EEG studies reveal brainwave patterns that demonstrate impossible levels of coherence, different brain regions synchronizing in ways that classical neuroscience says shouldn't occur. The gamma wave synchronization patterns measured in advanced meditators show mathematical signatures of global brain coherence that suggest consciousness temporarily transcends the normal constraints of neural processing speed and connectivity. Even more intriguing, when multiple meditators practice together, researchers find mathematical correlations in their brainwave patterns that appear instantly, regardless of physical distance between participants. The statistical analysis reveals coherence patterns that can't be explained by any known mechanism of classical communication between brains. These mathematical proofs validate what ancient wisdom traditions have taught for millennia about the multidimensional nature of mind. But now we have scientific frameworks for understanding how consciousness-based reality influence actually works. Your awareness isn't trapped inside your skull. It's a multidimensional phenomenon that operates through quantum principles, accesses non-local information, and participates directly in the mathematical processes that determine which version of reality manifests moment by moment. The numbers don't lie. Your mind operates beyond space and time, and the mathematical evidence grows stronger every year. This isn't mysticism, it's the emerging science of consciousness revealing the true scope of human potential. We've explored how your brain contains specialized circuitry for multidimensional access, and how mathematics proves consciousness operates beyond space-time. Now I need to share something that will fundamentally change how you understand reality itself. The universe operates like a vast geometric computer program, and certain shapes function as its programming language. Ancient cultures worldwide weren't worshipping geometric patterns because they looked pretty. They recognized something profound that modern science is only beginning to rediscover. Specific geometric forms serve as the fundamental code that structures reality across all dimensions. Think about this for a moment. The golden ratio appears in everything from nautilus shells to galaxy spirals. The Fibonacci sequence shows up in flower, petals, pine cones, and human DNA. These aren't coincidences. They're evidence that reality operates according to precise geometric programming languages. When quantum physicists peer into the subatomic realm, they discover particles organizing themselves according to geometric symmetries. The same patterns that ancient sacred geometry traditions mapped thousands of years ago. The Platonic solids, those 5 perfect three-dimensional forms, aren't just mathematical curiosities. They represent the basic geometric templates that consciousness uses to interface with different dimensional frequencies. Here's where it gets fascinating. Neuroscientists studying brainwave patterns during deep meditative states have found something remarkable. When people achieve altered consciousness experiences, their neural activity reorganizes into geometric patterns that mirror these ancient sacred forms. Your brain literally shifts into geometric coherence when accessing higher dimensional awareness. I've spent years researching this connection, and the implications are staggering. The dodecahedron, with its 12 pentagonal faces, activates completely different neural networks than focusing on a simple cube. Each geometric form creates specific resonance patterns in consciousness, like tuning forks for different dimensional frequencies. Consider the flower of life pattern, that intricate design of overlapping circles found in temples from Egypt to Japan. Modern holographic theory reveals why this pattern was so universally revered. It encodes the mathematical relationships that optimize consciousness for multidimensional access. The overlapping circles create interference patterns that mirror how information is stored and transmitted in holographic systems. The Sri Yantra, that complex triangular mandala from Vedic tradition, contains geometric relationships that contemporary physicists recognize as describing multidimensional space. Ancient practitioners weren't just creating pretty artwork, they were developing sophisticated technologies for programming higher dimensional matrices through structured mental visualization. This connects directly to what we discussed about your brain's hidden circuitry. Those specialized neural networks we explored aren't just passively receiving multidimensional information, they're actively transmitting geometric data patterns. When you visualize specific geometric forms while holding clear intentions, you're essentially programming reality's operating system. Laboratory studies have confirmed this isn't mystical speculation. Researchers monitoring people's brainwaves while they focus on different geometric patterns find distinct neural signatures for each form. Exposure to certain geometric ratios can induce altered states of consciousness within minutes. The geometry itself acts as a key, unlocking specific modes of awareness. But here's the practical application that changes everything. Combining geometric visualization with emotional coherence creates what researchers call morphic resonance, the ability to influence reality's probability patterns through structured mental activity. You're not just imagining shapes, you're interfacing with the fundamental programming language of existence itself. Ancient architects understood this principle intimately. They encoded these geometric relationships into temples and sacred sites, creating physical spaces that amplify consciousness and facilitate dimensional access. The Great Pyramid's proportions embody the golden ratio. Gothic cathedrals utilize specific geometric harmonies that induce transcendent states. These weren't accidents, they were engineered consciousness technologies. Modern holographic theory validates what these ancient traditions knew. Reality operates as a vast geometric information system. Every point in space contains the complete geometric blueprint of the whole, accessible through consciousness when properly attuned to the correct geometric frequencies. This is why meditation on sacred geometry produces such profound effects. You're not just relaxing or clearing your mind, you're literally programming your consciousness to resonate with reality's fundamental operating frequencies. The tetrahedron connects you to fire element consciousness. The icosahedron attunes you to water element awareness. Each form opens different dimensional gateways. When you understand that consciousness serves as both receiver and transmitter of geometric data patterns, everything changes. Your focused attention becomes a precision instrument for reality programming. Visualizing a spiral while setting intentions creates different quantum field interactions than holding a mandala pattern in your awareness. The implications extend far beyond personal development. This geometric programming language appears to be how consciousness interfaces with probability fields across all dimensions. Master this language, and you gain access to reality's source code. Start experimenting with this tonight. Choose one sacred geometric form, perhaps the flower of life or a simple golden spiral. Spend 10 minutes visualizing it clearly while maintaining emotional coherence around your desired future. Notice how this feels different from ordinary visualization. You're not just imagining, you're programming reality using its own fundamental language. This geometric approach to consciousness programming represents humanity's most ancient and sophisticated technology for shaping reality. We're rediscovering tools that our ancestors used to access capabilities we've forgotten we possess. The mathematics, the neuroscience, and the practical results all point to the same revolutionary conclusion. Geometric forms are the programming languages of multidimensional reality, and consciousness is the programmer. Now that we understand how geometric codes program reality's operating system, we're ready to explore the most sophisticated techniques for consciously navigating the probability streams that quantum mechanics tells us exist in perpetual superposition around us. Here's what most people don't realize about timeline navigation. You're already doing it unconsciously every moment of every day. Every choice you make, every thought you think, every emotion you feel is collapsing quantum probability waves into the specific timeline you're experiencing. The difference between unconscious drift and conscious navigation is like the difference between being swept along by a river current versus skillfully piloting a boat upstream toward your chosen destination. The dimensional viewing technique represents perhaps the most practical method for accessing multiple timeline probabilities simultaneously. I learned this from studying the practices of Tibetan dream yogis, who developed remarkably sophisticated protocols for maintaining conscious awareness across multiple dimensional levels. The process begins with establishing what I call a stable observation platform in expanded awareness. Start by finding a quiet space where you won't be disturbed for at least 30 minutes. Sit comfortably with your spine straight but not rigid. Close your eyes and begin by focusing on your breath, but not in the typical meditation sense. Instead, use your breathing as an anchor point while you gradually expand your awareness beyond the boundaries of your physical body. Imagine your consciousness as a sphere of light that begins at your heart center and slowly expands outward. First, it encompasses your entire body, then the room you're in, then the building, then progressively larger areas, until you sense yourself as a vast field of awareness looking down upon your physical location from a great height. This elevated perspective is your observation platform. From this expanded state, you can begin to perceive what the ancient Vedic texts called the probability streams, different potential timelines branching out from your current moment like tributaries flowing from a great river. The key is maintaining emotional coherence throughout this process. I cannot overstate how critical this is. When your emotional state contains internal conflict, when part of you wants one outcome while another part fears it or doubts it, you create what I call dimensional turbulence that makes clear perception impossible. Think of emotional coherence like tuning a radio to receive a clear signal. When your emotions are aligned and coherent, you achieve the energetic stability necessary for precise navigation between probability streams. This is why traditional shamanic cultures always emphasized emotional purification as a prerequisite for advanced spiritual practices. Once you've established your observation platform and achieved emotional coherence, you can begin the advanced visualization protocols that allow you to explore specific timeline probabilities. This isn't simple daydreaming or wishful thinking. You're engaging all 5 physical senses plus your intuitive perception to construct detailed sensory experiences of potential future scenarios. Let's say you want to explore a timeline where you've successfully launched a creative project. From your observation platform, begin constructing this scenario with meticulous detail. See the specific environment where this success is taking place. What does the lighting look like? What colors dominate the space? Hear the sounds associated with this timeline, conversations, background noises, perhaps the sound of your own voice expressing confidence and satisfaction. Engage your sense of touch by feeling the textures associated with this timeline. Maybe it's the smooth surface of a contract you're signing, or the weight of a successful product in your hands. Include taste and smell, perhaps the celebratory dinner you're sharing with supporters, or the particular scent of the environment where your success is unfolding. But here's where most people stop short of true timeline navigation. You must also engage your intuitive perception to sense the emotional signature and energetic quality of this probability stream. Each timeline has its own unique vibrational frequency, its own feeling tone that distinguishes it from other possibilities. Anchor points serve as navigation markers that help you maintain connection to specific probability streams once you've identified them. These might be particular symbols that appear consistently in your dimensional viewing sessions, specific phrases that capture the essence of your desired timeline, or sensory cues that instantly reconnect you to that probability stream's unique frequency. I use a technique I call quantum choice points to identify moments when timeline probabilities are most malleable. These occur during periods of heightened uncertainty or transition, moments when the quantum field is most responsive to conscious intention. You'll recognize these periods by their characteristic feeling of pregnant possibility, as if reality itself is holding its breath waiting for your decision. During these quantum choice points, your decisions carry exponentially more weight in determining which probability wave collapses into your experienced reality. This is why indigenous wisdom traditions emphasize the importance of remaining alert and conscious during times of change and uncertainty. Maintaining awareness across multiple dimensional levels simultaneously requires what I call bifocal consciousness, the ability to operate consciously in physical reality while maintaining connection to higher dimensional guidance systems. This skill develops gradually through practice. You begin to recognize the subtle signs that indicate successful timeline shift, changes in synchronicity patterns, shifts in dream content, alterations in your intuitive perception, and modifications in how others respond to you. Probability testing allows you to explore potential timeline outcomes before committing your consciousness fully to particular probability streams. Think of it as taking a test drive before purchasing a car. You project your awareness into a potential timeline just far enough to sense its general trajectory and consequences, then withdraw back to your observation platform to evaluate what you've discovered. The ancient traditions spoke of guardian intelligences, higher dimensional aspects of consciousness that can provide guidance and protection during advanced dimensional navigation practices. These aren't external entities, but rather expanded aspects of your own consciousness that exist beyond the limitations of linear time and space. Learning to recognize and work with these inner guidance systems becomes essential as your timeline navigation skills develop. The key to mastering these techniques lies not in forcing specific outcomes, but in developing the sensitivity to perceive the natural flow of probability streams and learning to align your choices with the currents that lead toward your highest potential. This is conscious co-creation with the Atman, quantum field itself, working in harmony with the fundamental principles that govern reality's deeper structures. Here's the thing about mastering your multidimensional self. It's not about becoming some mystical being who floats through life disconnected from reality. It's about becoming more effective in the physical world by understanding how consciousness operates across multiple dimensional layers simultaneously. Think of it like learning to use a smartphone. You don't abandon basic communication just because you now have access to the internet, GPS, and thousands of apps. Instead, you become more capable of navigating your daily life because you understand how to access different levels of information and functionality when you need them. The same principle applies to dimensional awareness. Your goal is integration, not escape. Let me share how to build a sustainable daily practice that develops these abilities while keeping you grounded and functional. The most successful practitioners I've studied follow what I call the dimensional sandwich approach. They begin each day with 15 minutes of higher dimensional awareness work, accessing those geometric consciousness patterns we discussed earlier, or practicing timeline navigation techniques. Then they engage fully with their three-dimensional responsibilities: work, relationships, practical tasks. Finally, they close the day with integration work, processing insights gained from both dimensions. This rhythm prevents the two most common pitfalls: spiritual bypassing, where people use dimensional work to avoid dealing with practical reality, and dimensional amnesia, where insights gained in expanded states completely disappear when you return to ordinary consciousness. The integration process itself requires specific techniques. When you receive information or perspectives during higher dimensional awareness states, immediately translate them into concrete, actionable steps for your physical reality. If you gain insight about a relationship dynamic while accessing fourth dimensional perspective, write down exactly how this changes your communication approach with that person. If you perceive a solution to a work challenge through geometric consciousness patterns, map out the specific implementation steps before the expanded state fades. I've discovered that dimensional access follows natural rhythms that you can learn to work with rather than against. Most people find their consciousness naturally more fluid during the hours between 4 and 6 a.m., when the brain's default mode network operates differently. The 3 days before and after new moons create optimal conditions for timeline navigation work, while full moons enhance the ability to perceive geometric reality structures. Your personal energy patterns matter too. Track when you feel most mentally flexible versus when you're most grounded and practical. Use your flexible periods for dimensional exploration and your grounded periods for integration and application. This prevents the scattered, unbalanced feeling that comes from trying to force expanded awareness when your system isn't naturally receptive. Let's talk practical applications across different life areas. In creative work, dimensional awareness allows you to access what I call solution templates, geometric patterns that exist as potential solutions before they manifest as specific ideas. Instead of struggling to force creativity, you learn to perceive these templates and translate them into your particular medium, whether that's writing, design, music, or problem solving. For relationships, fourth dimensional perspective reveals the energetic dynamics operating beneath surface interactions. You begin to see how your emotional patterns interconnect with others' patterns, creating predictable cycles of conflict or harmony. This isn't about reading minds or manipulating people. It's about understanding the deeper currents so you can respond more skillfully to what's actually happening rather than just reacting to surface behaviors. In professional contexts, timeline navigation becomes incredibly practical. Before important meetings or decisions, you can explore probable outcomes based on different approaches, essentially running mental simulations with access to information your ordinary consciousness might miss. This isn't fortune-telling. It's enhanced pattern recognition that incorporates subtle variables your analytical mind alone can't process. Now, let's address something crucial: maintaining discernment and psychological stability while developing these abilities. The biggest danger isn't that dimensional work is harmful. It's that people often mistake imagination or wishful thinking for genuine multidimensional perception. Real dimensional awareness has specific characteristics, provides information you couldn't have logically deduced, offers perspectives that remain coherent and useful when applied practically, and often includes details that feel surprising or contrary to your expectations. Imagination, by contrast, tends to confirm what you already believe and provides vague guidance that sounds profound but doesn't translate into effective action. Build your practice gradually. Start with 5-minute sessions and extend them only as your ability to maintain clear awareness increases. If you find yourself becoming spacey, disconnected from practical responsibilities, or developing grandiose beliefs about your abilities, you're moving too fast. Scale back and focus more heavily on integration work. Connect with others who share these interests, but maintain healthy skepticism. The most valuable communities encourage critical thinking and practical application rather than just sharing extraordinary experiences or validating each other's beliefs. Look for people who demonstrate increased effectiveness in their regular lives as a result of their dimensional work, not just those who have impressive stories to tell. As you develop proficiency, you'll notice something profound happening. You begin functioning as a conscious bridge between dimensional levels. You start naturally translating higher dimensional wisdom into forms that others can understand and apply, even if they don't share your dimensional awareness. This isn't about converting people to your worldview. It's about serving as a conduit for insights that benefit everyone, regardless of their belief system. This connects to something larger happening with human consciousness collectively. We're in a period where more people are naturally developing access to expanded awareness states. Your individual development contributes to this collective evolution, not through preaching or teaching, but simply by demonstrating what becomes possible when someone integrates multidimensional consciousness skillfully. For continued development beyond these basic techniques, pay attention to moments when your current practices feel effortless and automatic. That's when you're ready for more advanced work. Seek mentorship from people who demonstrate genuine mastery, not through dramatic claims, but through the quality of their presence, the wisdom of their guidance, and the practical effectiveness of their lives. True mastery in this work manifests as increased compassion, clearer thinking, and greater ability to serve others effectively. If your dimensional practice is making you feel superior to others, more judgmental, or less capable of handling ordinary human challenges, something has gone off track. The ultimate goal isn't to gain special powers or have extraordinary experiences. It's to become more fully human by understanding and integrating all the dimensions of consciousness that are naturally available to you. When you achieve this integration, you don't just access higher dimensions, you help anchor their wisdom into physical reality for everyone's benefit. If this video resonated with you, let us know by commenting, "I understood it,"